It's the best time of year in hockey. We are going to run through all 8 first-round series in the Stanley Cup playoffs and give you our Stanley Cup picks and predictions. Welcome to Pinnacle's NHL Best Bets. I'm Anthony Bruno, joined by Scott Cullen and Ben Barclay on behalf of Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for over 25 years, offering the best odds and best payouts during the entire NHL playoffs. All right, fellas. Let's not waste any time because we have a lot to get to. Let's start in the Eastern Conference. The Battle of Ontario, Leafs versus Senators. Toronto is a minus 185 favorite. They beat the Senators 4 times in a 5-year span, going back from 1999 to 2004. Scott, what is going to happen this time around in the Battle of Ontario?
Well, I don't think those previous wins are going to have a whole lot of bearing on this. Since half the players weren't even born at that point. But I think the difference here is the core 4 of the Maple Leafs. They bring a higher skill level, I guess, than, say, the top Sens forwards. And, you know, they've had their trouble in the playoffs. Like Marner has been, you know, dragged over the coals for his playoff performance in recent years. And if he struggles again, well, yeah, then the Leafs could lose. But, you know, when you go look at what the Maple Leafs typically get from Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, John Tavares, that's at a higher level than the Sens typically get from their top forwards. And I think that has to be the difference for Toronto, because if you look at it the other way, the Senators should have an advantage in goal. Like, as well as Anthony Stolarz has played this year, he played 34 games, was the most he's ever played in an NHL season. So I trust Linus Ullmark more. And on defense, I think the Maple Leafs have gotten better. You know, Chris Tanev has been a real solid addition for them, but at the same time, like, I think Ottawa's defense is quite strong. Like, Thomas Chabot has had a really great year. Jake Sanderson has gotten much better as the season has gone on. And so I think the difference here for the Maple Leafs is you need your top guys to show up and win the series for you. And that's where I'm leaning, is that I would take the Maple Leafs. I'm not sure I love them at minus 185 because I kind of don't trust those guys.
Yeah, it is hard to trust the Leafs at minus 185, considering how they have fallen flat on their face in the first round pretty much every year, except the year they beat Tampa. All right, so Ben, where are you leaning in this series?
So I think the prices from a betting perspective are accurately priced. I don't have a pick, just looking at the numbers there. I think it's going to be a tight series, and I think it's going to be a long series. Based on the way these two teams looked throughout the regular season, the Leafs formed into more of a defensive playoff style team, just with their structure, and the Sens, much of the same too. Low scoring, good checking, keeping things out in front of the net, good goaltending on both sides. Both teams were in the top 10 in save percentage all season too. I do think we're going to get a lot of 3-2, 2-1 games. And if I had to pick a side, trying to keep my biases aside here, based on the number, I'd lean the Sens, especially if they can get out early, get the pressure going on the Leafs. Like, the entire pressure in this series is on Toronto. I think in any way, shape, or form, if they lose, it's a choke job. The Sens, their goal going in, they had to get into the playoffs. That's the success in the season. Now it's kind of house money on top. If they can win a round, sure, anything can happen. So it'd be a lean to the Sens based on the price, but no official pick for me when it comes to placing a bet on the series.
Yeah, I don't love the price on the Leafs either. So I do think the Leafs are going to win this series. The Leafs have to win this series. We've seen over previous playoff years, they have gone into a lot of these series as the underdog or close to a coin flip. This is one of the series where they're a pretty sizable favorite, and if they don't get the job done, I mean, I think it's over with this team. Like, they got to make some drastic changes, and I know people have been saying that year after year, but I think this is where even me as a Leaf fan, where I draw the line in the sand. One thing I'll say about the Leafs, they were kind of a confusing team because all year their 5-on-5 numbers aren't great. Their possession numbers aren't great. But then when you look at their 5-on-5 goal differential, like, it's really good. They have great goaltending. I actually disagree with you, Scott. Anthony Stolarz has been unbelievable this year. I know he's only played 34 games. 3 shutouts in his last 4. He's been on fire. I think Anthony Stolarz is going to be a big difference maker for the Leafs during this playoff run. The Leafs, since the Four Nations, second best record in the NHL at 18-6-2, third in goals per game since the Four Nations break. Their power play has been excellent. I think the big thing in this series is Brady Tkachuk. It looks like he's going to get into the Senators' season finale, but how healthy is he? That's huge, because if you don't have Brady Tkachuk at full health, I think that's going to be really tough for the Senators to get through that series. The Senators also, one stat I'll mention, minus 18 goal differential at 5-on-5 this year. I don't love them at 5-on-5. I know they dominated the Leafs in the season series. I think Toronto gets it done, but it's a no bet for me as well. I don't love the price at minus 185. All right, moving on now to the Battle of Florida. Tampa and Florida. So, Ben, I'll go to you first. Who do you like in this series? Because right now it's close to a coin flip. The Panthers are minus 112 favorites, and the Lightning are minus 104.
So I like Tampa a lot, and I'm proceeding with caution, saying a lot there, because it's the defending Cup champions. It's the Florida Panthers. But going into this series, I look at the miles on the Florida team. 2 deep Cup runs the last 2 years, played in the last game of the season both those years. I think those miles will start to catch up on them. They're coming in with a lot of injury questions too. Ekblad out for the first 2 games with the suspension. And I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get everyone reintegrated in there and in sync, where Tampa has been firing on all cylinders throughout the season, especially going in here too. They have the revenge angle from last year, being knocked out by Florida too. And I just think the health and the home ice factor too for Tampa is massive. They were 29-8-4 at Amalie this year, and I think that's a fortress. They'll defend it well. I expect 6-7 games out of this series still. I do think they will really beat up on each other, but I think Tampa will prevail, and it's no discredit to Florida and how good they are, but to sustain that level where they're at year after year and the style they play, I do think it will catch up to them here.
All right, so Ben rolling with the Lightning. Scott, who do you like in the Battle of Florida?
I'm joining Ben here with the Lightning, and I think they do go into the playoffs. They're missing Oliver Bjorkstrand, who was a nice addition that they got from Seattle when they also brought Yanni Gourde back at the trade deadline. But if you look at the way the Lightning played down the stretch, they started to look a lot more like the championship contender Lightning of a few years ago than kind of the past few years when they've been knocked out earlier. And, I think a big part of that is Andrei Vasilevsky is having a fantastic season. Like if it weren't for Connor Hellebuck being, out of this world, I think a lot of the goaltending focus would be on Vasilevsky, because he's having as strong a season as he's had in a career that has been full of great seasons. And so, given the choice between what I think are 2 really good teams, I'm sort of leaning in Tampa's direction here as well. As Ben mentioned, Ekblad suspended for the first couple of games. Tkachuk hasn't played since the Four Nations face-off. I'm sure he's going to be a factor, but I would worry about how effective he's going to be, being that he's missed that much time. And so if I have to pick here, I'm liking the price on the Lightning at minus 104.
I'm right there with you, gentlemen. I also love the Lightning at minus 104.
This is terrible news for the Lightning.
Yeah, this means that it's going to be Panthers in 4. But before the series price came out for this series, I basically told myself, just take the dog in this series. And I love Tampa as a dog here. Listen, at full health, all systems go. I think the East does run through Florida, but the problem is, and you mentioned it, Scott, Matthew Tkachuk, he has not played since the Four Nations face-off. Ekblad's been out with the PED suspension. He's missing the first couple of games. They brought in these pieces at the trade deadline like Brad Marchand, Seth Jones, and these guys all haven't even had a chance to play together. Now, it's the Florida Panthers. They've been to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. You would think that they'll be able to figure it out a lot more quickly than maybe another team could figure it out. But this is a Lightning team. Ben, you said it. They've been amazing on home ice this season. Vasilevsky has been absolutely dialed in, the second best goalie in the league behind Hellebuck. I just think they're rolling right now, and if they're going to be the dog in this series, I'm very happy to take them at minus 104. One thing, Tkachuk, he talked on Wednesday. He said, I've really only been on the ice for a couple days with legit skates, so I'm just trying to peak sometime around game 1. I don't know, that's not very encouraging coming from Matthew Tkachuk. Just like his brother, I have no idea how healthy these guys are going to be, and they are so important for both of their teams. So give me the Lightning to win the series at minus 104. All right, moving on to one of my favorite series of the first round of the playoffs, the Washington Capitals taking on the Montreal Canadiens, who are back in the postseason for the first time since that run to the Cup final. Scott, we're starting things with you. Who is winning this series?
Well, I mean, the Capitals should win this series. I would be terrified to take them as the favorite, though, because as much as they've drastically improved over what they were last year when they snuck into the playoffs, had this terrible goal differential, they made a lot of good moves in the offseason to improve their team. They have 5 guys who've scored at least 25 goals this year, including Ovechkin, who has 43 goals. At his age is just insane. But I look at the way the Capitals have played down the stretch, and it's not great. And I worry about the health of Logan Thompson, who has been really good for them all season until he got hurt a few weeks back. And I think that uncertainty in goal would make me wary about taking them. Like, Charlie Lindgren has been okay in net for the Capitals, but okay is what leaves you vulnerable to getting upset. And if I look at Montreal, they don't have, they're a poor possession team. They're ranked down in the mid-20s over the last 25 games of the season. So you can't say, oh, well, Montreal is just going to control play. They won't. But what they do have is they have some high-end guys who have been able to rise to the occasion here down the stretch. Montreal's played really well since the Four Nations face-off, and it's largely due to Nick Suzuki and Juraj Slafkovsky and Cole Caulfield and Cole Hudson. Like, they've got their guys who kind of carry them. The wild card for them is Ivan Demidov, who they brought over from Russia. If he can come in and kind of make a difference, maybe the Canadiens make some noise in this series. But I don't like Montreal's underlying numbers enough to take them, but I certainly don't like the way Washington's going at the moment to take them either.
Hey, you think Ivan Demidov is like Alex Ovechkin, the way that he's being treated by this Montreal fan base. My goodness.
They're hoping.
Rockstar treatment. All right, so Ben, where are you leaning in this series? And just to reiterate the odds here, Capitals minus 245, the Habs currently plus 209 to win the series at Pinnacle.
So if I'm picking in my bracket or something, Washington's a no-brainer for me here. But based on the price, I couldn't get behind that and make a bet on them to win the series there. I do think, much like Tampa, the home ice factor, Washington 26-9-6 at home this season. I don't know if Montreal's going to be able to even steal one in Washington. If they do, maybe a different story. But also as well, Washington all season has been very steady in all key analytics for me. Possession, they outrank Montreal quite heavily. And the high danger chances against and expected goals against, Montreal was bottom 5 in those categories all season. And I do think it will catch up with them when it comes here. And Sam Montembeault, who's had a very nice season, credit to him. He's played a lot of games down the stretch here. I do think that will catch up to him too, maybe just the amount of hockey there. And Washington, I've been saying from the start of the season, it does come down to, can they flip that switch and get back into this playoff mode? Because they've largely had the 1 seed and the division wrapped up since mid-February. So, and I love how the team is built. The size, the physicality. I think they're really set up for a nice run here. It's if they can just channel that mode soon enough here to get there. And Logan Thompson is a wild card at this point. Charlie Lindgren's a fine goalie, but do I think he can back a team to a cup final? Probably not. So we'll see, but I do think Washington gets it done in this series.
The Capitals should win this series. I love how they were able to kind of retool on the fly. Like, last year was rough, got into the playoffs. Scott, you mentioned it. Terrible goal differential. They had no hope in hell. They retooled on the fly, had an amazing season. You had the great chase, so many great storylines. Protas having a breakout season. But man, oh man, this Habs team is cooking right now. And at plus 209, I am actually happy to back them to win this series. So since the Four Nations, the Habs have been one of the best teams in the NHL. 15-5-6 with a plus 13 goal differential since the Four Nations break. If you look at their goal differential overall in the season, minus 20, it looks terrible. But they've obviously been trending in the right direction over the last quarter of the season. The Capitals since the Four Nations, just a plus 1 goal differential, 15-10-1. I know they've kind of taken their foot off the gas a little bit. One thing we forget about the Habs is that Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield have already played in a Stanley Cup final. It's insane to think about because we think, oh, it's their first taste of postseason hockey. All these young guys into the playoffs. No, they were literally there a few years ago against the Lightning in the Cup final. It's just crazy to think about that. Listen, I think the Capitals are the better team, but at this price, I'm actually happy to back the Habs. I will be backing them at plus 209. Another factor, Lane Hudson. This guy is electric, and I think he's a game changer from the back end. So I'm willing to take my chances. And Sam Montembeault, he's had a great season. He has really good underlying numbers. He can go toe-to-toe with any of the Capitals goaltenders. So give me the Habs to win the series at plus 209. All right, moving on to the final series in the Eastern Conference. And gentlemen, I'm not going to lie, this is probably the least excited I am to watch any of the series in the first round. Like, I might not watch a single second of this Hurricanes-Devils series. Hurricanes are minus 270, Devils plus 233. Scott, who's winning this series?
Well, for my stats nerds out there, this is the Tyler Dellow Cup. He moved from New Jersey to Carolina in the offseason, and so he's joined Eric Tulsky in Carolina. I'm sure he'd love a revenge win here, but I also think that the Hurricanes are well positioned to win. I mean, the Hurricanes are the best possession team in the league by a pretty healthy margin, which is fine. I mean, they've been doing that for a couple of years. Their main issue is that they don't have enough kind of high-end guys to score, I guess, the series deciding goals when they need them. But going against this New Jersey team, I think they can get away with it. I don't think that, the Devils without Jack Hughes, I think that's devastating for that team, because I think the Devils are a solid enough team. They've played much better this year, and they got good goaltending as compared to what happened last season. But I think without Hughes, the Devils don't have enough game breakers either. And so I think that they're going to get beat on the shot chart by the Hurricanes, and eventually they'll just get worn down. And so the Hurricanes should win this series. I would even be tempted to take them at that price, because I really have little faith in the Devils right now.
All right, so Scott is backing the analytics darlings. Ben, who do you like, Hurricanes, Devils?
Yeah, more of the same from me, as Scott just said there. But boy, does this one ever have the feeling of like first game mid-afternoon on a Sunday where they just place it, much like the Houston Texans playoff games. I looked and tried hard to find a case to make for the Devils, but I couldn't find anything. The analytic darlings, they've been that way for years. As Scott said, there's just no underlying or stuff that's in your face that could make a case for the Devils for me. And Carolina in round one is about as sure a thing as it kind of gets in the playoffs. And over the last 5 years, they've kind of been, like, round two is where they've had kind of their struggles, like the Leafs have in round one. Yep. They haven't been able to get over that hump. So I think this is a quick series, especially with home ice. Carolina, another team that's just largely unstoppable at home. So keep it there. Yeah, Carolina, and like Scott said, even at this price, I would probably find some value, just because I do not think the Devils stand a chance.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of analysis on this series. The Carolina Hurricanes, year after year after year, they are so good at 5-on-5. You look at all the underlying numbers, expected goals, Corsi. I mean, they're just so good at 5-on-5. But the problem with this team is that they don't have that high-end talent. Now, I do trust them in the first round. I think they're going to get through this series in probably 5 or 6 games. I'll probably stay away. I don't know if I'm going to lay the minus 270. Probably stay away from that. But as this team progresses deeper in the playoffs, the lack of star talent kind of always bites them in the ass, really. They go from Marty Necas to Mikko Rantanen to Logan Stankoven. So as good as they are at 5-on-5 this year, I actually think that they're a worse team than they were last year. However, Ben, you said this. It's now been 6 years in a row that the Canes have won at least one playoff series. The Devils, without Jack Hughes, I know Dougie Hamilton just returned for the season finale, but they actually have the worst record of all 16 playoff teams since the Four Nations. 11, 13-1 with a minus 13 goal differential. Hurricanes are going to win this series, but I'm staying away from the price at minus 270. All right, moving on to the Western Conference, and we are going to start with the Winnipeg Jets and St. Louis Blues. Gentlemen, let me jump in first on this, because there's a couple of very interesting stats I'd like to mention. The Blues have the best record in the NHL since the Four Nations break. 19-4-3 with a plus 36 goal differential. On top of that, Robert Thomas is the leading scorer in the NHL since the Four Nations break with 40 points in 26 games. He did suffer a lower body injury in the final game of the season. They're saying he left the game for precautionary reasons. We'll have to keep our eye on that. The Jets are dealing with an injury. Nikolai Ehlers is week to week with a foot injury. Listen, I know the Jets have had an amazing season. President's Trophy winners. They're minus 210 favorites in this series, but I'm just going to go out and say it. I am locking in the Blues at plus 179 at Pinnacle to win this series. They have been so good recently, and I just think this is a little bit mispriced based on how both teams have been trending. I don't want to base everything on how the Blues have been playing since the Four Nations, but my goodness, it's hard to ignore. And even when you look at 5-on-5 goals for per 60 minutes, they're second in the NHL since the Four Nations break. Love how they're playing. I don't care how great Hellebuck's been this year. Give me the Blues at plus 179. Let's throw it to Scott next.
Well, you see, the concern I have for the Jets is, like, the Ehlers injury is a big deal because he drives play in addition to the points he produces, but he really helps the second line kind of keep the puck moving in the right direction for them. But also Gabe Vilardi has missed a bunch of time down the stretch here. And if they don't have at least one of them back, I think that's a real issue. You know, they can kind of get away with missing one winger in their top six because they bump up Alex Iafallo, who's sort of been an overqualified fourth liner for good chunks of the season. But if they're missing a couple, then they start having to kind of fill holes, and it ends up a little bit more challenging. And like you've said, the Blues have this, you know, phenomenal record down the stretch. They were kind of in contention for playoff spot, and then just blew away the rest of the teams that were trying to get in there. And I think Dylan Holloway has had a fantastic season for them. You know, given what they had expected, I think they got a decent start, and then when Jim Montgomery took over, Holloway's numbers took off, and he's just been a huge addition for them. That I know he missed a little time recently too, but I think I'm sort of the mind that I think Hellebuck has to bounce back based on, like, his playoff performance last year was so rough that I can't imagine that he struggles again. But because the Blues have been playing so well, I couldn't bring myself to take the Jets in this series. So if we're talking based on price, the Blues are better value to me.
Wow. All right. So we're both on the Blues. Ben, how about you? Where are you leaning in this series?
So I'm leaning the other way, despite the injuries for the Jets and kind of everything you both outlined there. I still think the hype for the Blues, in my opinion, has almost gone a little too far. And I think we'd love to grasp onto one of these low seeds that gets hot and kind of forget everything the other team has done through the season. I understand the Demons, Hellebuck Demons. I'd still much rather take Hellebuck in this series with home ice. Again, Winnipeg, another home team, 37-4 at home this season. I don't think the Blues will have enough to, get the scoring they need past him. They've been very good defensively in this stretch down the Four Nations, but still the underlying numbers offensively haven't been there. And I do think the dam burst a bit. They had a little 3-game slide after, their 12-game win streak, when they kind of stepped up in class of opponents there. And they're stepping up to the top of the West here in this series. So I do think the Jets will get this done in probably about 6 games. Another big thing for me too in this, the special teams battle, Winnipeg's second-ranked power play all season, Blues 27th ranked penalty kill. If the Blues can't stay out of the box here, where it is playoff hockey, the whistles do go away, so maybe. I think the Jets power play will be enough to get them over the top, and it will take a Binnington, as we saw in the Four Nations final. He'll need to be playing like that, I think, each and every game to give the Blues kind of a puncher's chance here. So we'll see. I could be wrong. I'm going with a lot of favorites here, but I'll take the Jets in this one.
No, that's a good point you made, Ben. The special teams battle is definitely favoring the Jets. They had the number 1 power play in the league this year. The Blues below average in both power play and penalty kill. One thing I don't love about this Jets team either, they're just not great at 5-on-5. They kind of remind me of the Leafs. Really good goaltending, good power play, not great at 5-on-5. It's hard to rely on that throughout an entire cup run, so maybe they get clipped by the Blues. Scott and I hope they do. All right. Moving on to, before some injuries, this looked like it was going to be the series of the first round, and maybe it still will be the best series of the first round. It's the Dallas Stars taking on the Colorado Avalanche. Now, there was a big injury that happened in the final game of the season for the Stars. Jason Robertson suffered a knee injury. So, his postseason future is completely in doubt here. Miro Heiskanen, star defenseman for Dallas. He's been ruled out for game 1. Who knows when he's going to get back into the lineup. So right now, the Stars plus 136, the Avalanche minus 157 favorites. And right now, these are the two favorites to win the Stanley Cup. The Avalanche at Pinnacle plus 700, the Stars plus 750. They're meeting in the first round. Pretty crazy. Ben, who do you like in this series?
So pre-Robertson news last night, there's still Heiskanen still could be coming back here. It looks like I would have leaned Colorado, but now that the price has jumped into the minus 160s here, I have to lean towards Dallas at that price with home ice. I still think top to bottom, it's two Titans in the NHL. I'd have to take any team catching plus 130 plus in that series. I'm not betting it myself. I think it's going to be a 6-7 game series, and I'm just excited to sit back and watch it without any betting interest. But for me, it'd be a lean to Dallas now. The way Ottinger's playing too, I do trust him more than the Colorado goalies as well, even though they've been playing so well down the stretch here too. And even though they've been getting caved a bit, Dallas, Ottinger's been standing on his head and is in playoff form. So when needed, I think he'll have the big saves for them here. So it's, again, a lean to Dallas, but no official bet from me.
All right, so Ben is staying away. Scott, who do you like in the battle of the Stanley Cup favorites?
Well, I like the Avalanche a lot. They made some nice moves at the deadline. Brock Nelson and Charlie Coyle. They sort of had to retool right after the Mikko Rantanen trade. Things didn't seem to quite be working out the way they had hoped. But they also had some flexibility where they could go and make some moves at the deadline to shore up their roster. And while losing Rantanen's obviously a huge deal, I think the depth they have has made the Avalanche very formidable. And going into a series against Dallas, I think the real difference here is that without Heiskanen, I don't know who neutralizes Nathan MacKinnon. That if they had Heiskanen, you go, okay, well there's a really tough matchup, and he can maybe help slow MacKinnon down. But Thomas Harley's making great strides as the defenseman for Dallas. I don't like him if he ends up out there against MacKinnon, and so I think the Stars for the Avalanche are going to be the ones who carry the series, and so that's MacKinnon and Cale Makar are the ones who I expect to provide the difference.
I love the Colorado Avalanche. Down the middle, Nathan MacKinnon, Brock Nelson, and Charlie Coyle, who came in at the trade deadline. Cale Makar on the back end. I will say, like, Mackenzie Blackwood, since he got traded over from San Jose, like, he has really good numbers this season, like .913 save percentage, .233 goals against, but he has kind of been struggling a little bit down the stretch. That could maybe be, if you want to say they have a weak point, that might potentially be a weak point at some point throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs, but I think they're going to get through this series. Listen, if you were able to get in on the Avalanche before this Jason Robertson injury, fantastic. Right now, the Avalanche at minus 157. I don't love it. It's kind of like right on the border for me. I'm still going to take them to win the series at minus 157. If it gets anywhere into the minus 160s, minus 170, I probably won't even touch it. But I think it's going to be an uphill battle. No Jason Robertson. We don't know when Heiskanen's going to be back. The Avalanche are absolutely loaded. They are top 5 in the league in goals per game and goals against per game since the Four Nations. This team is peaking at the right time. And one thing we didn't mention, Gabriel Landeskog, who just had a 2-game conditioning stint in the AHL, hasn't played in 3 seasons, and now he might draw back into the lineup. What a game changer that would be, even if he's like 70% of the old Gabriel Landeskog. He had 2 points in 2 games during that AHL conditioning stint. So that'll be good, an interesting storyline to track. Give me the Avalanche at minus 157. All right, we have 2 series left to go. Let's move on now to Vegas and Minnesota. The Knights minus 250 favorites, the Wild plus 213. Scott, who's winning this one?
Well, when you look at the overall records, you say, well, this should be an easy win for Vegas. The thing that I guess gives me pause is that the Wild with Kirill Kaprizov in the lineup have been vastly different than what their overall record is. They're 25-13-3 with Kaprizov in the lineup this year. And now, obviously, a lot of that happened early in the season before he was injured. But they've got Kaprizov back. Joel Eriksson-Ek has returned to the lineup. If I have to take a side, I will take the Wild as large underdogs here. I would probably avoid the series altogether, but I'm wary enough that Kaprizov and Eriksson-Ek getting back in the lineup makes the Wild a whole lot better than what their overall record appears to be.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore how good the Wild were like the first half of the season when all those guys were healthy. Yeah. So Ben, who do you like? Because Vegas, one of the biggest first-round favorites here, but again, you have the Kaprizov and Eriksson-Ek factor coming back into the lineup. So where's your head at?
So Vegas on the series price, too expensive for me, but I do think they win this series, and rather convincingly. Looking at this roster, what they've done year after year, they're built for playoff hockey. The size and strength they have, top to bottom. Big edges in Corsi for percentage, expected goals for, high danger chances for all season for them. I trust their goaltending. They've dominated this head-to-head matchup, 8-2 in the last 10. 5 of those wins by 2 or more goals. And they're going into last season's playoffs, they were the 8th seed. And much like Florida in the East, I don't think they care where they play. They're just in a very good position now. They took a much better Dallas team last year than this Minnesota team is to 7 games as an 8th seed. And they were a shot away or 2 shots away from winning that series. I think that extra rest, not having a deep run last year, will benefit them here, and they'll be ready to rock another great team at home with a very impressive home record. I think it's a little too late just getting the guys back from Minnesota for me to take a flyer on them here. I do think Vegas gets this done.
Yeah, a part of me really wanted to take the Wild like Scott, because I have looked at the numbers with Kaprizov in the lineup, before those guys went down. Like before Kaprizov went down, through the first 35 games, the Wild had the 5th best record in the NHL. Like that's hard to ignore. I'm not going to look too much into the season series, but Vegas did sweep the season series 3-0-0, outscored the Wild 12-4 total, 7-4 at 5-on-5. A couple injury notes, like Jack Eichel missed 4 of the last 5 games with an upper body injury. He returned for the regular season finale, seems to be okay. Alex Pietrangelo has also been banged up down the stretch. So a couple things to keep your eye on. But again, I mentioned this about a couple other teams. I don't like when teams have negative goal differentials at 5-on-5. To me, it just screams like completely overrated. And this Wild team, -7 at 5-on-5. I get their 2 best players were half the season to miss 77 games, but I'm with Ben here. I think Vegas wins this series, and I think they probably win in 5 or 6 games. I don't love the -250, so it's probably a stay away for me, but I do like Vegas to win the series. All right. Before we get into our Stanley Cup picks, it is the last series of the first round. And we have seen this year after year after year. It is the Oilers taking on the Los Angeles Kings. The Oilers are -119 favorites. They have knocked out the Kings 3 years in a row in the first round. Scott, is it going to happen again?
I don't think so. And it feels really weird to say, I'm going to go pick against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Like that doesn't seem like the path to success. But I'll tell you, the Matthias Ekholm injury for Edmonton really worries me for their Stanley Cup chances this year. You can look at where the Oilers finished in the standings and say, well, McDavid missed some time and Draisaitl missed some time, and they might be better than that overall record suggests. But when you take away Ekholm, who's like their steadiest defenseman, guy who eats up a bunch of minutes for them, I really don't like their chances. And so you put them up against this Kings team. The Kings, I know I'm going to be mowing Ben's lawn here, but the Kings are a dominant home ice team this year, right? They have 5 losses on home ice, and so if the Kings are going to grind this out and turn it into a low scoring kind of series, I think they have a chance to finally kind of get some revenge on this team that keeps bouncing them every year. So, and I think, the odds reflect it. I think if everybody was high on the Oilers as a real cup contender, they would be favored by a lot more than they are. And I'm sort of on the side that I'm believing more in the Kings.
Yeah, I believe last year the Oilers heading into this first round series were like -240. So obviously the price is a lot tighter this year. Ben, Who do you like, Oilers, Kings?
Yeah, more the same for me here. Getting a plus number too on the Kings, I must take that. I would have priced it probably at about a minus 110, pick them either side. And the only reason I would have priced it there for the Oilers is based on the recent history, and the Demons got to be in the head of the Kings a little bit. But I do think it's largely the same core of players for the Kings who have been through it these last 3 seasons, getting knocked out by Edmonton. They're going to have that revenge on their mind. And analytically, they stack up next to anyone as amongst the best in all key categories. The Oilers are up there too, especially when they have all their horses in there, the big guys. But Scott mentioned it. The Ekholm injury is, I think, if you go after McDavid, Draisaitl, the next most important player to lose for them would be Ekholm. The minutes he eats, the situations he plays in, covers up for a lot of what we see on Evan Bouchard. Great offensive player, but we know what happens when the puck gets down in his zone. So I think I'd be backing the Kings with confidence here, and want McDavid to get his cup, really do. I just don't think it's this year, just based on the circumstances.
I'm just going to go ahead and say it, boys. The wrong team is favored in this series. The Los Angeles Kings should be favorites, which means we're all on the Kings, which also means that the Oilers are going to sweep them.
Terrible news for the Kings.
And McDavid and Draisaitl are going to combine for 30 points in this series. So it's already written in the stars. But no, I love the Kings at this price. Plus 102. They have had such a great season. They are the best home team in the NHL. You guys said it, 31-5-4 on home ice. They had the best 5-on-5 goal differential in the NHL this season at plus 57. Again, going back to teams that I don't like when they have negative goal differentials at 5-on-5. The Oilers, minus 5 goal differential at 5-on-5 this season. Last season, they were plus 40. Now, McDavid and Draisaitl have been banged up down the stretch. They haven't had, well, Draisaitl's had his typical season. McDavid, not quite as much. The depth scoring just has not been there like we saw last season. This team is not dialed in. They lost some depth when you look at guys like, especially Dylan Holloway. This is just not a great team at the moment. Now, can McDavid and Draisaitl just flip a switch and win a series by themselves? Yes. But Stuart Skinner is having a dreadful season. I think it's a huge mismatch in net. Darcy Kemper's been one of the best goalies in the league this year. The Matthias Ekholm injury is awful for this Oilers team. He is such a key part of everything they do defensively. The Kings, it's their time. I even like the depth that they have now. Like, one sneaky addition they brought in, Andrei Kuzmenko. 17 points in 21 games since coming over at the trade deadline. I'm locking in the Kings, gentlemen. Plus 102. They're finally going to slay the Oilers and maybe make a deep run. All right. That brings us now into our Stanley Cup picks. Scott, let's start with you. Just tell us straight up, who is winning the Stanley Cup in 2025?
Well, I know this doesn't sound very courageous. I'm taking the Colorado Avalanche. They weren't the actual Cup favorites when the lines opened, but they've moved there fairly quickly, and I'm on board. I really like the looks of this Avs team, and they're mostly healthy heading into the playoffs, so I like that too.
All right, short, sweet, and to the point. Scott is on the Avalanche. Ben, let me know who's winning the Cup.
I've gone back and forth. I have 3 teams circled that I could make a good case for. I'm going to take Vegas, though. You can get them at right around plus 930 at Pinnacle. I think based on the way the bracket has set up here, I think they're going to get through Minnesota with relative ease, as we said, and then they'll get the winner of Edmonton, LA. It's either going to be a hobbled-ish Edmonton team, which I think they'll be able to just stack up against. And the Kings, coming off that series win, I don't think they're going to be able to do it against Vegas, too. And that sets them up into the conference final, I think, there. And for the price there, too, I like the value more than a Washington in the East, just with the question marks there. And I wanted to take Tampa, too, but just the miles they're going to have to go through Florida, either Toronto or Ottawa, hopefully Ottawa. But no, Vegas is my pick. I like the price. It's a good number, and just haven't forgotten what this team can do.
I'm also staying in the Western Conference, and I am going to be right there with Scott. I like the Colorado Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup. I love everything about this team. The way that they were able to retool the entire team basically on the fly this season was incredible. I love their depth down the middle, which I alluded to in the series breakdown against the Stars. Defensively, when you have Cale Makar and Devon Taves, those guys playing 25 plus minutes a game. Mackenzie Blackwood, even though I said he's been struggling down the stretch, he's been a massive upgrade on Alexander Georgiev, who was a disaster. Yep. I love everything about this Avalanche team. I think they're peaking at the right time. I think they win the Cup. I will mention my one dark horse team is the Los Angeles Kings. And right now at Pinnacle, you can get them at a shade under 22-1. I think if they get through the Oilers, obviously it's going to be tough to also get through Vegas. But at that number, I think that's a team in that range that could potentially make a run. I love their depth. I love them defensively. I like Kemper. And then being a Leaf fan, I put a future bet on the Leafs. I mean, I've had a future on the Leafs going back to the preseason. I bet on them to win the Stanley Cup every year because I wouldn't be able to live with myself if they won the Stanley Cup and I did not have money on them. I am not telling you to go bet on the Leafs. I do also have a Cup future on the Toronto Maple Leafs. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our Stanley Cup playoffs first round preview. Hope you really enjoyed that. We will be back for every single round of the Stanley Cup playoffs to give you our best bets, picks, and predictions. It's the best time of year in hockey, so I hope you enjoy the first round, which is always electric. Good luck with all of your bets, and remember to bet smart and bet Pinnacle.